Is it a big story in India? Are there, you know, the David Walsh, Paul Kimmage, Ed Hawkins of this world in India writing daily or weekly?
No. I think that there's some emotional fatigue with match fixing, perhaps in cricket now. It wasn't so long ago that we had Chennai Super Kings and Rajasthan Royals banned from the IPL. Was it for 2 seasons? Mm-hmm. And no one ever mentions it.
Why?
No one ever mentions it.
Why?
Yeah.
Why is that though?
Well, it's because it's an embarrassment to this huge brand.
Is it embarrassing?
There's always a problem in any sport and across any governance topic, whether that might be safeguarding. We've seen all the scandals in gymnastics, for example, in the US. Is for things to be swept under the carpet because it damages the brand. It damages their ability to sell sponsorship tickets, TV deals, and what have you.
Nobody wants to upset the gravy train.
Yeah. Nobody wants a scandal.
Yeah. It's all in cycling.
Yorkshire cricket as well. Just sweep it under the carpet because we don't want it. We don't want people to know about it. We don't want it to affect our turnover.
Do you think that the media is in some way complicit in avoiding the topic?
I think there have been some good investigations into match fixing in cricket. The problem is, I don't think the media is complicit in sort of sweeping it under the carpet because the bottom line is it's heavy on money, time and resource to go and do a proper investigation into match fixing in cricket, and the likelihood is that you're not really going to get a smoking gun at the end of it. You need to get people on camera admitting to doing something or that they're going to do something, as we saw with the Pakistan spot fixing scandal. But I mean that investigation had its flaws because, as I mentioned earlier, you can't actually place a bet on a no ball. But what it did expose was corrupt practices within the Pakistan team.
But I get the fixing thing because you spend a lot of time investigating and chasing things, and you and I have both been given these. Someone in the game will send you something and you'll spend months on it and you won't be able to get any information on it in the end anyway. But my interest is that you said 200 billion was a bet.
Yeah, US, yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of money. That's what Bumble makes a week, but for the rest of us, that's a lot of money.
You know.
And so we don't write about legal gambling. We don't write about gambling trends. You're one of the few people that even writes tips on gambling. Like most of the articles that are written about gambling are, what to bet on in the next game. No one talks about the fact that this person took these 3 wickets and the market completely flipped. There's no real understanding of the betting markets in cricket journalism or anything else. Other sports are a little bit better, and I know England's a bit weird because of what you can and can't talk about with gambling on air at different times and everything.
Yes.
But realistically, if it's the biggest industry within cricket is gambling, and it is talked about far less than almost anything else in cricket.
Yeah, going back to your question and picking up a bit what Jarrod said about the media being complicit, I think the reaction to an investigation by the general media is always interesting. It's very, very defensive from the outset. And I always find that interesting because to get to the point of broadcast or publication with an investigation, such as match fixing, like the Al Jazeera one a few years back, is incredibly hard. Even to begin an investigation is incredibly hard. And before you get the ball rolling, you have to go to a lawyer or that broadcaster or publication's legal team and get the green light with prima facie evidence. Now, that prima facie evidence may be that you've got loads of sources saying this player is doing this and what have you, or you've got some tape recordings, video recordings, or what have you. And that's before you can even start. You have to get the go-ahead. And there are so many hoops you have to jump through that when it all comes out at the end of the day, something like that is not portrayed perhaps fairly by the media in general. They're instead quick to criticise and defend. I think cricket's a very insecure sport. As soon as anybody starts mentioning match fixing, people get very defensive, and the media is complicit. Is complicit in that way.
Is there a fear factor as well? I mean, the people behind match fixing are not the kind of people that any of us really want to be walking into on a dark street. Not that's likely.
I don't mind that.
Well, there you go. But I know of at least one journalist who got a phone call, was interested in the story, and when it became known he was looking into that story, he had a little phone call, and he decided that wasn't really worth it.
Leave it.
Yeah, well, that's because
That's called blackmail, isn't it? Or threatening.
yeah, I mean,
Well, it's not blackmail. That's
Threatening. Yeah, if we're going to threaten you.
the illegal markets in India, or the match fixing, is supposed to be run by Dawood Ibrahim, it's the D Company mafia, which is one of the largest mafias in the world. Dawood Ibrahim is on your FBI most wanted list. It's serious organised crime stuff.
Right. So, who'd want to get involved in that, right?
Yeah.
Well, most cricketers in the world, if you talk to them off the record, will tell you that they're absolutely positive that Bob Woolmer was murdered based on match fixing, right? Like the rumours within cricket about these guys and how dangerous they are, and there's other cricketers who've died young that they would put on that list as well. So the scare stuff is there, right? But that's still getting away from, I think, the larger point of, if we don't talk about anything, right? If we don't talk about legal betting, how are we ever going to be in a position to talk about illegal betting, right? If we don't understand how cricket markets work, right? If we don't understand why Papua New Guinea are 140 in a game and Uganda are 280 in a game, coming up. If we don't talk about anything like that, no one in the media is ready for when an actual scandal happens, let alone the real thing, which is cricket fans around the world are putting their money into accounts over and over again to put bets on, and we don't talk about any of it.
Let's go back to the beginning then. So how many million was
200 billion?
No, how much money was spent on the exchange on that England versus Pakistan women's game?
I think it was 5 million.
Now, England are heavy favourites to win that game, right? So where's that? That cannot all be on the result, surely.
I think that was just the match result. I was only looking at one market for that one.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, that's 5 minutes like turnover. That's people putting money in, taking out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a lot. I know it's a lot.
It's not a
but
lot.
It's not a lot.
How much are you getting paid, man?
Sounds like a lot to
I've
me.
got you. So in betting terms, that's just run of the mill. That's all right.
It's not a huge amount.
It's
It's not a huge amount for betting, but it's a huge amount for that particular game that was one-sided.
Yeah.
And we're not
think about what the
suggesting.
women on both sides are getting paid.
Can I just say, we're not suggesting there's anything untoward.
No,
with
it
that
was
match.
perfectly legal.
We're
No,
just
it's perfectly
looking at-
normal. It's perfectly normal. There's nothing.
But
No problem.
you have to.
Is
one of the
cricket
problems, right?
is cricket in England vulnerable? Are you watching closely T20 games in England? Leicestershire versus Northampton and so on. Is cricket in England vulnerable?
Just as an added to that, so I was watching Surrey against whoever they're playing.
You would be watching Surrey.
I would be
wouldn't you?
watching Surrey, but I noticed that there'd been an earlier game in the Blast, which came up on YouTube. 250,000 people had watched Kent versus Hampshire, which I guess is, and the majority of those would be in India,
Yeah, if it's on TV in India,
which it is.
and if they're and then the key one is, are they betting on it in India?
Yeah.
So if there's no other game which is considered more interesting in India at that time, and given that there probably is, there's probably a franchise league somewhere else.
But there isn't, is there? Because it's the T20 World Cup's happening. So
Yeah.
actually, this is probably golden time. Because there are no franchise leagues at the moment for the next few weeks, are there?
No, we've just
Because
got
I
the
thought
T20 World
quarter of a million people watching a Vitality Blast game on a YouTube stream is quite a healthy number.
I find that, I do find that surprising, that number. But
Again, not suggesting anything untoward with that game itself, but it shows that there is a massive audience. And having spoken to people involved in the streams for the Blast games, a large portion of that audience is coming from overseas.
I worked on that International League T20, not this January, the January before. And so you had your briefing before, and we would always look at the crowd, and we were told there won't be a crowd, there will be nobody here. This is a new enterprise for a company called ZTV, who usually do drama. They're going into cricket. This is purely for their cricket channel. Don't mention the crowd, there won't be any. Don't say it's disappointing. It's not for that. This is purely for television. And it was the ILT20, and it was on at the same time as the South African franchise, and players were hopping between the two.
Well, that's a really important point, and this sort of takes match fixing into a different area, more of the sort of competition manipulation area. And Jarrod will know about this, I'm sure, is about players able to leave one franchise and then go and play for another, which throws up all kinds of conflicts of interest and corruption possibilities. Because if you've got a player playing in the UAE who wants to go to the South Africa League, but he can't go because his team might qualify for the playoffs, but he's going to earn more money in South Africa.
Wow.
It's not good.
Yeah, I think the match fixing corruption is obviously a big thing, but I remember talking to a coach in a T20 league, and he said, our players are all fired up and they'll be here. He said, but if we lose the first three of the first five, they'll all check out and they'll start thinking about their next league.
Yeah, there are no, I can't think of really many other sports around the world which has that potentially powder keg situation, because, as I said earlier, the franchise T20 governance is just completely Wild West. There are no checks and balances in place.
Wow. And I know the answer to this question, but say if you go from January to December and you start with the SA20 and the ILT20 and the PSL and the BPL and the IPL and then the 100 and the MCL, the CPL, the GLT20.
Oh, well.
Onto the Big Bash and the Super Smash. And I've missed out the LPL.
You've missed out about 15, but
I've still done pretty well. Do any of those people talk to each other, or do they just talk to the ICC?
In terms of
anything. I mean, they're going to have to talk if, say, Sonny on Orion is having to leave the Blast, I forgot the Blast, to go and play in the CPL final. I imagine whoever is playing for in the CPL and the Surrey, they're going to have to talk at some point and say, when's he coming?
Yeah.
He's leaving.
Yeah.
But is there any conversations? A bit like you've got a high street and you've got all the security guards and they all talk to all the other security guards at all the other shops and say, blah, blah, blah's walking up the street. Yep, we've got him. Is there anything like that?
No, I mean, they will be speaking to each other, but I don't think they're,
on an official
not
basis.
On a WhatsApp group, no.
So that comes down to governance that you were talking about.
But you will
before,
see
right?
that, and Jarrod will know about this, and you'll know about this, David, in terms of trying to follow who is playing for each team, just from the view of trying to cover a match. Absolutely no idea. People just turn up suddenly in a team, and they've got no idea where they've come from. There's no news source where you're told so-and-so is leaving, so-and-so is injured. Nobody's got any idea of what's going on.
The toss comes up, and sometimes you see a player that you don't realise has been signed by that franchise who's been flown in. Like, that happens all the time now.
Yeah, Luce Deploy was going to play for a team in the ILT20, and he got on the plane thinking he was going to go and play for, I think it might have been Sharjah. When he got there, he got off the plane and said, no, you're not playing for Sharjah, you're playing for somebody else.
And wasn't he wearing kit from another tournament as well, like during that tournament? Like, he wasn't even sure what kit he had on. So the thing you just said, let's say someone's playing in the Blast and they want to go to another tournament. They don't even always talk to the teams. More often than not, it's just the agent. And the agent doesn't always know the full picture as well. It is so disorganized, the way that all of this is done, to the point at which I've seen players drafted. I've been on the table where a player's been drafted as an all-rounder, and I've said to the team, I don't think he bowls anymore now. Of course he bowls. No one even bothered to call and ask this guy if he bowled anymore, right? And he didn't.
But if you extrapolate this to, doomsday scenario, and let's all be really cynical about it, we're talking a $200 billion illegal industry. You've got that level of disorganisation, a lack of loyalty to teams, players turning up not knowing who they're going to play for. Why wouldn't that player, when he's approached in a bar, in a hotel, whatever, by a corrupter, think, yeah, all right, because I'm going next day, I'm going to go somewhere else and play.
So do they have the finger on the corruptors? Do they know who they are? Or are they emerging all the time? There are new ones coming on.
Yeah, I think the ICC changed tact and they wanted to get their finger on who the corruptors were and really profile them and target them.
How did they do it?
Well, they would have liaised with Interpol, CBI in India, Central Bureau of Investigation in India, and got all these names. They've got a database of who they should be keeping an eye on. They've got sources in the illegal market. They're doing much better than they were when I wrote that book, when they didn't know even how the market works.
So they have a thing at every team hotel now where the security guards of the hotel are given photos of people that need to be flashed up when that's going on. So they go as far as that to be like stopping them getting into the team hotel. That doesn't mean that the guy doesn't go across the street to get a coffee and then is involved, but that's how far they've moved on from the old days.
Just explain the security guy. Who's that? The security guy with the team?
No, so the ACSU will give photos to people who work with the teams, people who work with the leagues, but also the hotel security guards, the ground security guards, anything that is team related. Will have photos of people that if they have been seen in the area, they need to be notified, they need to be watched.
Anybody watch the Fast Show? You ain't seen me, right?
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.